You want us to fight those things? Call clicked his mandibles in disbelief, compound eyes fixed on the tactical display. Are you completely insane or just suicidal? The Vorath commander's facial tentacles writhed in frustration. They're just humans, primitive mammals, barely a century into their space age. Your fee has already been tripled, Call replied. Quadruple it again, and I still wouldn't take this contract, Keurig Tall chittered, jabbing a clawed appendage at the holographic imagery. Look at them. Actually, look at them. The footage showed what the humans designated as their Special Operations Forces conducting exercises on a harsh desert world. The warriors moved with an unsettling combination of fluid grace and predatory intent, laden with enough weaponry to make a Cran War beast feel inadequately armed. I've studied their combat doctrine, Call continued. Do you know what those markings mean? The ones they wear on their armor? Skulls. Human skulls. They advertise death on their very bodies. What kind of species does that? A primitive one trying to appear threatening, the commander scoffed. Their psychological warfare is crude at best. Crude, Call's antennae twitched violently. Let me tell you about crude. Those humans you're so eager to dismiss. They developed powered armor because they saw it in entertainment videos. They created plasma weapons because they thought they looked cool in games. Their entire military-industrial complex is driven by the question, wouldn't it be awesome if? The commander's tentacles stilled. Surely you're exaggerating. I wish I was. You know what they call their elite units? Names like Ghost Recon and Shadow Raiders. They give their gunships names like Black Death and Angel of Destruction. They name their carriers after ancient warriors and conquerors. Many species engage in martial posturing. No, you don't understand, Call interrupted, mandibles clicking rapidly. They don't do this to intimidate enemies. They do it because they think it's fun. Because some human looked at a heavily armed assault transport and thought, you know what would make this better? Painting flames on the side and calling it Valkyrie's Fury. The tactical display shifted to show human special forces conducting a night raid. Their movements were precise, coordinated, and utterly terrifying to watch. They flowed through the darkness like living shadows, every motion economical and deadly. Look at how they move, Call continued. Most species either excel at stealth or direct combat. Humans, they switch between the two like flipping a switch. One moment, they're ghosts. The next, they're unleashing enough firepower to level a small city. And they do it all while making terrible jokes over their comm channels. The commander's facial tentacles had begun to pale slightly. The jokes cannot be that significant a factor. Oh, really? Let me share some intercepted communications from their last engagement. Call pulled up an audio file. Human voices crackled through the speakers. Hey Jenkins, what's the difference between a Vorath battlecruiser and a target range? I don't know, Sarge. What? About 30 seconds once Anderson gets that rail gun warmed up. Sound of human laughter mixed with explosive detonations. See, Call's antennae drooped. They make jokes while fighting. Who does that? It's not natural. The commander shifted uncomfortably. Perhaps we could negotiate with their leadership instead. Their leadership? Call gave the chittering equivalent of a laugh. You mean the ones who look at their most aggressive, adrenaline-seeking, danger-loving volunteers and say, yes, these are the ones we should give our most advanced weapons to. The ones who took their special forces request for orbital drop capabilities and responded by developing pods that let them literally surf through atmospheric re-entry. They do what? Oh yes, they call it riding the lightning because of course they do. They turn everything into an action video game. Their training simulations are indistinguishable from their entertainment. Do you know what they call their combat stimulants? Go Juice. Their battlefield medical technology? Stim packs. It's like they're living in their own combat fiction. The tactical display showed more footage. Humans in powered armor executing impossible maneuvers. Their movements enhanced by neural interfaces and synthetic muscle fibers. And don't even get me started on their enhancement programs, Call continued. Most species pursue either biological or technological advancement. Humans? They said both. And make it awesome. They've got soldiers who can interface directly with their weapons, who can process combat data faster than our best AI, who can run for days without rest. And what do they do with these capabilities? They compete to see who can pull off the most ridiculous stunts in actual combat. The commander's skin had taken on a distinctly unhealthy hue. Surely they have some weaknesses. Oh, they do. They're reckless, prone to improvisation, and constantly pushing the limits of their equipment. But here's the thing. They know these are weaknesses, and they've turned them into strengths. They train for equipment failure. They practice improvising. Their doctrine literally includes guidelines for when to ignore doctrine. That's madness. Exactly. And that's why I'm not fighting them. Because the only thing more terrifying than their capabilities is their enthusiasm for using them. They don't just just embrace combat, they enjoy it. They turn warfare into an art form, complete with its own culture, traditions, and inside jokes. The commander's tentacles had wrapped themselves into tight knots. Perhaps we should reconsider our expansion plans. Now you're thinking clearly, Call agreed. Because let me tell you the worst part, all those special forces we've been watching, those are their normal ones. They have even more elite units they keep secret. Can you imagine what those must be like? I'd rather not. Wise choice, because I've heard rumors about their Black Ops teams. Stories about operators who can bend probability itself, who can step through dimensions, who can... Enough. The commander's tentacles were practically tied in knots. The contract is withdrawn. We'll seek easier conquests elsewhere. Good call, Call chittered. Because the only thing more dangerous than human special forces is what happens when they get creative. Did you know they once used orbital drop pods to deliver high-yield explosives disguised as supply crates? The enemy took them into their own storage facilities. They called it Operation Special Delivery and laughed about it for weeks. As the commander hurried away, Call turned back to the tactical display. The footage showed a human special forces team practicing close-quarters combat. Their movements were a deadly dance of precision and controlled violence. One of them executed a perfect backflip while firing two weapons simultaneously. Completely insane, Call muttered. And they probably did that flip just because they thought it looked cool. In the background, more intercepted communications played. Hey, anyone see where I left that antimatter grenade? Check your other tactical pocket, Dave. Oh yeah, there it is, right next to my lucky rabbit's foot. More human laughter followed. Kirk Tall shut off the display with a shudder. Let others fight the humans if they want. I prefer my battles survivable and my enemies sane. He paused. Besides, I've heard the humans have recently started experimenting with something they called space ninjas, and I definitely don't want to know what that's about. As he left the command center, he could have sworn he heard distant human laughter echoing through the corridors. Probably just his imagination. Probably, but he quickened his pace anyway. Later that cycle, when asked why he turned down such a lucrative contract, Krall had a simple answer. Have you ever watched humans fight? They treat combat like a competition to see who can be the most spectacularly lethal while having the most fun. They don't just wade into battle, they choreograph it. His fellow mercenaries laughed until he showed them the footage. They didn't laugh after that. Instead, they did the sensible thing. They updated their contracts to specifically exclude operations against human special forces. Some called them cowards. Correctall called them survivors. Because, in the end, there was only one thing you needed to know about human special forces. They were the kind of warriors who looked at the impossible, grinned, and said, "Hold my beer," and anyone who knew humans knew that phrase never ended well for their opponents. Remember that time we turned down the Vorith contract? Zixvac asked, mandibles twitching with barely suppressed amusement. Kay's antennae flattened against his carapace. Don't remind me. Best decision I ever made, even if nobody believed me at the time. The mercenary lounge of Station 7 Echo was unusually crowded, filled with various species sharing war stories and contract information. Most were trying very hard to avoid discussing the latest news from the Outer Rim. Speaking of humans, a Taurite mercenary commander called from across the room, their crystalline form catching the ambient light. Has anyone seen the footage from the Dorax incident? A collective shudder ran through the assembled warriors. Even the normally stoic Quantum Hive representatives dimmed their bioluminescence. You mean when those human operators decided to... Call paused, mandibles clicking rapidly as he searched for the right words. What did they call it? Improvise a tactical solution using locally sourced materials? That's the diplomatic version. The Tellarite chimed, their crystalline structure vibrating with suppressed mirth. What they actually said was, "Hey y'all, watch this." Those words, a veteran Marian warrior growled, their fur standing on end, should be classified as a psychological weapon. Nothing good ever follows them. Call pulled up a hollow screen displaying the now infamous footage. The assembled mercenaries leaned in, despite themselves, unable to look away from what had become known as the incident. The footage showed a squad of human special forces operators cornered in a Dorian manufacturing facility. The Dorax, being silicon-based lifeforms, had assumed their industrial-grade thermal processing units would provide an effective barrier against the humans. They had not counted on human creativity. Watch this part, Call chittered, indicating a human operator who appeared to be grinning inside their helmet. This is where it goes from standard human insanity to, well, human insanity. The footage showed the operator turning to their squad. The audio crackled. "Hey, you know what those processing units are full of? Industrial coolant. No, free-range tactical lubricant." What followed was a masterclass in what humans called adaptive problem solving, and what everyone else called complete madness. The operators somehow converted the facility's thermal processing network into an improvised distribution system for their combat stimulants and explosive compounds. They weaponized the cooling system. A newly arrived quantum hive drone buzzed in disbelief. They turned temperature regulation equipment into a delivery mechanism for military-grade stimulants and high explosives. While making jokes about it being just like that one video game, Kreikel added something about plumbing simulator and speedrunning strats. The footage continued, showing the Daxian forces discovering, much to their dismay, that their own facility's infrastructure had been turned against them. The human operators had essentially created what they cheerfully called a base-wide party delivery system. Order up, one extra spicy combat cocktail, coming right up. Don't forget to tip your server, came the sound of human voices, followed by explosions mixed with laughter. But that's not even the worst part, Zixvac interjected. Tell them about the maintenance drones. Call's antennae drooped. They reprogrammed the facility's maintenance drones to play something called entry music whenever they breached a new section. Apparently, it was for dramatic effect. The footage shifted to show maintenance drones bursting through walls while blaring what human databases identified as classic rock music. The operators could be heard arguing about the soundtrack selection between firefights. Really, Jenkins? Highway to Hell again. It's a classic for a reason, Sarge. And this, KXTAL continued, is why I don't take contracts involving humans anymore. Because who looks at a hostile facility's infrastructure and thinks, you know what this needs? Background music and an improvised stimulant delivery system. To be fair, the Tellarite commander noted, their crystalline form glinting with amusement. It was very effective. That's the problem, KXTAL exclaimed. Everything they do is effective, no matter how insane it seems. They turned basic maintenance drones into what they called party bots and used them to distribute combat enhancers throughout an enemy facility, all while making jokes and arguing about music choices. The footage shifted to show the final moments of the operation, with human operators surfing on reprogrammed maintenance drones through corridors filled with stimulant-laced vapor, firing weapons akimbo while shouting quotes from their entertainment media. Remember, kids, one voice yelled, don't try this at home unless you've completed the proper certification course. Cue more laughter and explosions. They recorded training videos afterward, Zixvac added quietly. Called it Creative Resource Utilization 101, making the enemy's base your party venue. The assembled mercenaries sat in stunned silence, processing this information. Finally, a Marian warrior spoke. So, they not only pulled off this insanity, but they turned it into a teaching opportunity? Correct, KXTAL confirmed. Complete with peer reviews and suggestions for alternative music selections for various tactical scenarios. I heard they got a commendation, the Tellarite added. 3 commendations, actually, Call corrected. 1 for mission success, 1 for creative resource utilization, and 1 for, and I quote, maintaining optimal morale through appropriate musical accompaniment. The lounge fell silent again, broken only by the sound of contracts being updated to specifically exclude any operations where humans might be present. Even the Quantum Hive representatives, normally eager for combat data, were rapidly revising their engagement protocols. The truly terrifying part, Kirk mused, is that this is probably one of their tamer operations. Imagine what their actual classified missions are like. I'd rather not, chorused several voices. Wise choice, Call agreed, because I've heard rumors about their latest training programs. Apparently, they're teaching their operators something called parkour. The mass exodus from the lounge was immediate and unprecedented. Later, when updating the Mercenary Guild's official advisory documents, Call added a new warning. If you hear human special forces operators laughing during combat, retreat immediately. If you hear them say, hey, watch this, or I've got an idea, retreat faster. And if you hear them discussing music choices for their operation, surrender. It's easier that way. The advisory was approved unanimously, because if there's one thing the galaxy's mercenary community had learned, it was this: the only thing more dangerous than human special forces was human special forces having fun. And they were always having fun. In the depths of space, aboard a human special forces transport, a sergeant reviewed the footage from the Dorax incident with their team. Alright people, what did we learn? Always check the facility's infrastructure for tactical repurposing opportunities. Music selection matters. Industrial coolant systems make excellent improvised delivery mechanisms. All good points, the sergeant nodded. But you're forgetting the most important lesson. What's that, Sarge? Next time, we bring better speakers. Those maintenance drone audio systems were not doing justice to AC/DC. The resulting laughter echoed through the transport, causing nearby alien ships to nervously adjust their course. Just another day in human special forces. So, Karzal began, his mandibles twitching with what might have been suppressed laughter. Who's heard about the Nexus 9 situation? The mercenary lounge of Station 7 Echo, normally a hub of boisterous activity, fell into the kind of silence usually reserved for funeral ceremonies and bankruptcy proceedings. You mean the incident with the Zix-Vax antenna curled inward? The battle hymns? A collective shudder ran through the assembled mercenaries. Even the station's AI dimmed its ambient lighting, as if trying to distance itself from the conversation. That's the one, Kreikel confirmed, pulling up yet another set of footage that nobody really wanted to see but couldn't help watching. Though the humans insisted on calling it Operation, dropping beats and taking streets. The hollow screen flickered to life, showing what appeared to be a standard urban pacification operation. Standard, that is, until the human special forces arrived. For context, KX Tall explained, the Nexus 9 mining colony had been taken over by a particularly aggressive sect of quantum-scale engineers. They had developed a theoretical immunity to conventional psychological warfare, theoretical being the operative word. Ofrix's commander rumbled from their environmental tank. Exactly, Call chittered, because nobody's theoretical models accounted for humans turning psychological warfare into, well, the footage showed human operators advancing through the colony streets, their powered armor's external speakers blasting what their databases identified as workout music. Each squad had apparently been allowed to choose their own theme song. Squad 3, this is Command. Your music selection is causing seismic disturbances. Sorry, Command, can't hear you over how awesome we are, came the reply, followed by bass drops timed to explosions. They synchronized their assault pattern to the music. Zix-Vac explained to a horrified group of newly arrived mercenaries. They called it tactical rhythm optimization. That's not even the worst part, Kral added. Show them the footage from the central plaza. The hollow screen shifted to show a squad of human operators who had apparently decided that their assault on the colony's main administrative building needed what they called a proper soundtrack. They had somehow rigged the colony's emergency broadcast system to play something they referred to as boss battle music. Jenkins, what the hell is K-pop doing in our tactical playlist? A voice demanded. Cultural victory, Sarge. They can't fight if they're too busy trying to figure out the choreography. Fair point. Sync up the breaching charges to the chorus. The footage showed the quantum engineers' defensive formations breaking down as they tried to process the sight of human special forces operators conducting room-clearing operations while perfectly synchronized to what appeared to be elaborate dance music. But here's where it gets really interesting, Kistel continued, his mandibles clicking rapidly. The quantum engineers, operating on probability matrices, couldn't process the apparent randomness of human combat tactics combined with choreographed movement patterns. Their cognitive frameworks literally crashed. They tried to calculate the tactical advantage of backflips, Zix-Vac added solemnly. That was their first mistake. The footage showed the aftermath. Quantum engineers were either surrendering en masse or joining what they called the rhythm of tactical enlightenment. Several could be seen attempting to replicate human combat dance moves. Within 3 cycles, Kral explained, the entire colony had developed what they called groove-based combat doctrine. They formed a new religion around it, something about achieving tactical superiority through synchronized movement and appropriate background music. The humans encouraged this. A newly arrived hive mind representative buzzed in disbelief. Encouraged it? KX Tall chittered. They offered advanced courses, called it Cultural Victory, alternative approaches to combat resolution. They even published a manual. A manual? Someone asked. Yes, KX Tall confirmed. Bass drops and hotshots. A comprehensive guide to rhythm-enhanced urban warfare. The footage shifted to show human instructors teaching former quantum engineers the finer points of what they called tactical dancing. The engineers had apparently developed complex mathematical formulas to optimize their movements for maximum style points. Remember, people, one human instructor said, if you're not having fun, you're not doing it right. But what's the tactical advantage of a spin move? An engineer asked. Looking awesome is the tactical advantage. The really concerning part, Zix-Vac noted, is how effective it was. The colony's productivity increased by 300% after they adopted what they called groove-based optimization protocols. Humans weaponized dance music. Kural Zal chittered in disbelief. They turned psychological warfare into a party, and somehow it worked better than conventional methods. The quantum engineers now require all security personnel to achieve what they call sick move certification before deployment, Zix-Vac added. The assembled mercenaries watched as the footage showed the colony's current state. Quantum engineers conducting their probability calculations through elaborate dance moves, security teams training to what humans called beats per minute optimization, and former insurgents arguing about playlist selection for their patrol routes. They've started hosting competitions, Zix-Vac added. Something called So You Think You Can Fight? The humans judge them on both combat effectiveness and, quote, style points. And the worst part, KX Tall's antennae drooped. Other colonies are starting to adopt the practice. There's talk of making it an official combat doctrine. The humans are calling it the Great Groove Revolution. The footage ended with a graduation ceremony for the first class of rhythm combat specialists, complete with what the humans called a tactical dance-off. The quantum engineers had apparently calculated that adding backflips to standard combat maneuvers increased their effectiveness by exactly 43.7%. This, KX Tall concluded, is why I don't take contracts involving humans anymore. Because who looks at a hostile quantum engineering collective and thinks, you know what this situation needs? A dance battle. But it worked, someone pointed out. That's exactly the problem, KX Tall exclaimed. Everything they do works, no matter how insane it seems. They turned combat operations into a choreographed performance art, and now there's a whole religion based on achieving tactical supremacy through superior dance moves. The Mercenary lounge fell into contemplative silence, broken only by the distant sound of bass-heavy music from the station's human quarter. Several mercenaries nervously adjusted their combat loadouts to include what humans call swagger enhancement modules. I heard, Zixvac said quietly, that they're developing something called tactical rap battles for diplomatic negotiations. The mass exodus from the lounge set a new speed record. Later, when updating the Mercenary Guild's advisory documents, KX Tall added another warning. If human special forces start playing music during combat operations, do not attempt to calculate the tactical advantage of their movements. There isn't one. They just think it looks cool, and somehow that makes it work. The advisory was approved before he even finished writing it. Because if there's one thing the galaxy's mercenary community had learned, it was this: the only thing more dangerous than human special forces having fun was human special forces starting a trend. And everything they did started a trend. And everything they did started a trend. Meanwhile, in a classified human special forces training facility, sir, the quantum engineers are requesting advanced courses in something they're calling probability-enhanced breakdancing. Approved, but tell them the spin moves need more pizzazz. Yes, sir. Should I add tactical choreography to the standard training curriculum? Better make it mandatory. Can't have our operators falling behind in the dance combat arms race we accidentally started. Sir, about that. Several other species are requesting training in rhythm-based warfare. Well, you know what they say, Lieutenant. What's that, sir? The groove must flow. The resulting laughter echoed through the facility, causing several quantum probability matrices in the vicinity to spontaneously rewrite themselves to include dance moves. Just another day in human special forces. I swear by all quantum probabilities, the veteran Dravik commander declared, their crystalline form vibrating with poorly suppressed emotion. This is the absolute last time I underestimate human social protocols. The Mercenary Lounge of Station 7 Echo had become something of an unofficial support group for those who had encountered human special forces. Today's session was particularly well attended, given the recent events in the Epsilon sector. Let me guess, KX chittered, already pulling up his ever-growing database of human tactical absurdities. You encountered their new diplomatic integration specialists? Is that what they're calling them now? The Drax's crystalline structure flickered with what might have been PTSD. We called them the T-Team. A ripple of understanding passed through the assembled mercenaries. Even the station's cleaning drones seemed to pause in sympathy. Oh no, Zixvac's antennae curled in recognition. You got the full British specialty service treatment, didn't you? The Dravik commander's crystals chimed in affirmation. We thought we had them cornered. Our forces had surrounded their position in the diplomatic quarter. We demanded their surrender and they, a pause. They invited us in for tea. Classic BSTS move. KX Tall nodded sagely, bringing up the footage. Show us what happened. The hollow screen flickered to life, displaying what started as a standard urban containment operation. Standard, that is, until the humans deployed what they cheerfully called tactical hospitality. I say, chaps, these fellows seem rather tense. Jenkins, break out the Earl Grey. The combat blend, sir? Of course. And do remember the proper china. We're not savages. The footage showed human operators in full combat gear meticulously setting up what they referred to as a proper tea service in the middle of an active combat zone. They had somehow managed to include doilies. At first, we thought it was a trick, the Dravik commander continued. Some new form of psychological warfare. Then they started discussing the proper way to hold a teacup while wearing powered armor. Remember, everyone, pinky out. It's in the manual, sir. Which manual is that exactly? Advanced Combat Etiquette, Chapter 3, Tea Time Tactics. The footage showed increasingly confused Dravik forces watching as human operators debated the tactical advantages of different tea blends while simultaneously maintaining perfect combat readiness. But that's not even the worst part. The commander's crystals chimed distressingly. They had scones. Combat-grade scones? Zvak asked asked sympathetically. With tactical clotted cream, the commander confirmed. They insisted there was a proper way to apply it. They had a whole briefing about it, called it Operation Jam First. Karzal's mandibles clicked in understanding. You got the full Cornwall versus Devon tactical doctrine demonstration. The footage showed human operators engaging in what appeared to be a heated debate about proper scone preparation, while casually disarming explosive devices and maintaining defensive positions. With all due respect, sir, the Devonshire method provides superior tactical coverage that's dangerously close to insubordination, Jenkins. Everyone knows jam first is the superior approach. Perhaps we should consult the Queen's Royal Combat Catering Corps manual. They had an actual manual for this? A newly arrived Quantum Hive representative buzzed in disbelief. They have manuals for everything, Call explained. This one's called Tactical Tea Service, a comprehensive guide to combat catering, complete with sections on emergency doily deployment and proper pinky positioning under fire. The footage continued, showing the Dravik forces gradually being drawn into what the humans called aggressive hospitality. Several crystal warriors could be seen awkwardly attempting to hold teacups with their energy manipulators. They insisted on proper introductions. The commander continued, their crystalline structure flickering with the memory. Full titles, unit designations, preferred tea varieties. They had a dossier on everyone's tea preferences. That would be their intelligence division, Zixvac noted. I heard they have a whole department dedicated to what they call tactical social engineering. The footage showed human operators conducting what they called synchronized tea service with military precision. They had apparently developed specific protocols for every possible social scenario, including proper combat tea etiquette for multiple species. Jenkins, the Drax commander's crystals are looking a bit dull. Offer them the special blend. The classified one, sir? Indeed, and do remember the proper serving temperature for in-life forms. We're not barbarians. Within 3 hours, the Dravik commander recalled, they had turned our containment operation into what they called a proper afternoon tactical tea session, complete with discussion groups about optimal scone preparation techniques. But did you actually drink the tea? Karzal asked carefully. Of course we did. They had specific blends optimized for crystalline biology. Do you know how rare that is? They called it their special force selection, said it was a closely guarded secret of their combat culinary corps. The footage showed the aftermath. Dravik forces and human operators engaged in what appeared to be a highly civilized discussion about proper tea service protocols while maintaining full combat readiness. Several crystal warriors had adapted their energy fields to better hold the tiny cups. By the end of the day, the commander's crystals chimed resignedly. We had signed 3 trade agreements, established a cultural exchange program, and agreed to host monthly tea ceremonies. They called it Operation Steep and Keep. The commander added, building better relations through superior tea service. And the scone dispute? Zixvac inquired. Ongoing. They've established a joint human-Dravik research committee to study optimal topping application sequences. The humans call it the Strategic Scone Initiative. The assembled mercenaries watched as the footage showed current conditions in the Epsilon sector. Regular tea ceremonies between human and Dravik forces, complete with what the humans called tactical doily deployment and heated debates about proper scone preparation. They've started certification courses, the commander added, something called Advanced Combat Hospitality. The humans are training our forces in what they call tactical politeness. This is why I don't take contracts involving humans anymore, KX Tall concluded, because who looks at a military standoff and thinks, you know what this needs? Properly served tea and a debate about scones. But it worked, someone pointed out. That's the problem, KX Tall exclaimed. Everything they do works. They turned combat operations into a social event, and now we have joint training exercises in tactical tea service. The mercenary lounge fell into contemplative silence, broken only by the distant sound of china clinking from the station's human quarter. Several mercenaries discreetly adjusted their loadouts to include what humans call emergency hospitality kits. Later, when updating the Mercenary Guild's advisory documents yet again, KX Tall added another warning. If human special forces offer you tea, accept it. Their hospitality is as tactically precise as their combat operations, and refusing could lead to what they call aggressive tea deployment. The advisory was approved before the tea could cool. Because if there's one thing the galaxy's mercenary community had learned, it was this: the only thing more dangerous than human special forces in combat was human special forces being polite. And they were always polite. Meanwhile, at a classified human special forces training facility, sir, the Dravik are requesting advanced courses in what they're calling tactical etiquette. Approved, but tell them the doily deployment still needs work. Yes, sir. Should I add Combat Catering 101 to the standard curriculum. Better make it mandatory. Can't have our operators serving tea without proper tactical consideration. Sir, about that. Several other species are requesting training in advanced hospitality warfare. Well, you know what they say, Lieutenant. What's that, sir? The tea must flow. The resulting laughter echoed through the facility, causing several nearby tea sets to rattle in sympathy. Just another day in human special forces.